right, and we're back on a little UX panel here with my favorite guests of all times. Well, almost like that. Where we're going to talk a bit about enterprise UX and in general, what does UX mean in bigger companies when it comes to specifically kind of, well, not selling UX, I don't like this kind of phrase, right? But making it work on big scale. And we have Iain McConchie, just goes by Conch.
Conch is good, yeah.
Conch is cool. I like Conch. And we have Constantine from Syzygy, but you've been, doing a lot of things in the past as well. And we have Jay, not Andre.
No, Carl.
Jay from Adobe actually joining us as well. All right, excellent. So maybe we can just jump in. I'm curious at this point. I mean, all of us here are kind of been involved in some quite complicated UX projects, right? And we've been working with kind of quite big clients as well. What are the main things that you stumble upon every single time when you start working with a big company? And how do you solve them every single time? Maybe we can start with you.
Okay, so one of the main things that we start when we start off workshops, even actually in the pitch stage, we talk to the clients and we make sure that they understand the stakeholder management. And that's not necessarily the project team on their side, but the company as a whole. We're building some software at the moment which has a user base, but then that sort of ripples outwards. And we have to make sure that the people involved in the project send the message out to the other people who are waiting down the line for this new software that's coming along, and managing expectations, because sometimes when you're putting prototypes out, really low fidelity things, people at the other end see them and say, yeah, but I'm clicking on this and it's not doing what I'm expecting it to do. And they begin to start creating negative feelings about the design that you're only at the very early stages of. And that comes back and it's not necessarily helpful. So there's this management process which is really important for any large job.
All right.
So Conch, you've been working with Tesco, Transport of London, McLaren F1. Is that design-driven approach really accepted at those large enterprises today?
Yeah, it's maybe not to begin with, but I think once you kind of articulate the sort of the value that brings, which can be difficult, it's not an easy step to make, but once you can do that, it really helps. I think the best example of that is probably what we do with Transport for London. Mm-hmm. A few years ago, they sort of initiated a very big mobility program for their staff. So nothing that me or you would see on the tube, but something that would enable the staff in the background to sort of do their job more efficiently. But we knew that there was so many things we could do, so it was really important that we established a set of standards, which we called UX standards, that would allow us to evaluate all the projects they had initiated. These are little discoveries that we would do. They would involve a lot of user testing, a lot of validation, and really to sort of understand, is bringing technology into this area going to be more efficient? Is it actually going to save time? Because sometimes pen and paper does the job. Yeah. We didn't want to put technology in there for the sake of technology.
Yeah. Right. I'm curious at this point, actually. So you've been working a lot as well on medical services and financial services, right?
We've been doing some work. We've been collaborating a little with some of the financial services.
Right, and I'm just curious, so at this point, especially when it comes to specific new form factors, like let's say a watch, right? Normally you would say, well, who would use a watch to pay online and things like that? Do you see this kind of specific form factor still staying irrelevant for for the industry? Or are they all... I mean, you never know what the user is going to do, right?
Yeah, you never know what the user is going to do, but you can try and understand what they want to do. We sort of use an outcome-driven approach, very similar to jobs to be done, to really understand whether something's actually relevant for the user or not. Often, what you assume to be the thing that they want isn't, and only with some really good research and validation can you understand whether or not that is the case.
Right, because very often when it comes to design, we tend to think that we create one experience and then we kind of repackage it to everything else. So we're just going to make sure it works on a little tablet and then it works on the watch. But isn't it like rediscovering the design as the interface altogether every now and pretty much all the time?
Yeah, it's never about porting the same functionality from one device to the next. It's very much understanding what's appropriate for that medium, what that device, and the context as well. Really important to understand the context that we're using it in.
All right.
So Chris, when we talked earlier, you said that your work is designed to meet very specific and measurable KPIs. How do you actually measure a delightful experience?
A delightful experience. Well, it's one of those things that when you set out at the very beginning of the project, you agree the KPIs with the client, and if you're meeting the KPIs, whatever they may be, in theory, you're giving some element of delight both to the client and to the end user. And it depends what the experience is, but what we have as an ethos at Syzygy, where I work, is that we design happiness. Now, there's no one line which will actually explain what happiness is, but we hope that by using the products and services that we design, that the outcome of those products and services is achieved, and that people return. Now, if that puts a smile on people's faces at the same time, then it is classed as delight, perhaps. But how you actually measure it is nothing that I would say has a specific scientific answer. Probably people would disagree with me, but I've not yet seen results of some project that has the delight factor put there
number
on
of
paper.
smiles.
Yeah.
smiles.
I mean, yes, you could do. You could have the number of likes on something, but not every product has a little heart shape somewhere in the corner.
Yeah. It also feels to me like very often when we talk about delights, it feels like delight being delightful is more like a long-term strategy, while having like more clicks or things like that, or more sales is like more immediate strategy, right? So if you want to invest into like creating delightful experiences, then it means you're playing a long-term goal, because you want to create this loyalty with your customers, kind of building this relationship. Well, if you just want them to click on a button, they're going to click on a button, then they're going to leave maybe and not come back, right? So that was not a question, I'm sorry. But I have a question for Jay. So you are working on Adobe XD, and this is not a simple product to build or design, I think. It's interesting to see how we can apply UX when we're building just traditional, regular things. But when you're designing a product for designers who are very critical about design and everything, there must be some challenges that are kind of really complicated to tackle. So maybe you can share some of them.
Yeah, well, I mean, the question I asked myself before we actually started to build that thing is like, how can a designer, user experience designer, like take the actual patchwork of tools, because the user experience in working with those tools is actually the opposite of what they strive to do for their customers, right? So you are absolutely right. The expectance bar is super high. I think the biggest challenge has been, like I tried to explain in my keynote, to really leave our own opinion at the door, right? To go out and really empathize what those designers, our users, think and request and want XD to become. And this is, especially like in a large oil tanker Adobe it's quite a change. But I believe we like sort of did it. It feels like that. It's the feedback we're getting. So yeah.
All right. Because you're actually supposed to take over the next question, I think.
I am?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Oh. You're the man.
Yeah, that's fine.
Iain, let's talk about that rise of recent new tools or established tools like Figma or Sketch, and others that try to come up with just that very tool you're looking for. What do you think would be the ideal solution today and maybe tomorrow to fill the gap between design and development? And what do you think XD's take is on that?
Yeah, I think we've seen, like you say, a rise in tools over the last probably 2 years, I think. We've seen a lot of stuff. We've gone beyond just Photoshop and then redlining and handing to engineers. I think with all the different tools, a lot of them you're kind of hacking together to try and get that perfect workflow. Nothing has quite sort of nailed it yet. I think what's encouraging about what we're seeing with XD is the fact that they are starting to bridge those gaps. So the fact that you can design and prototype in the same workflow is really, really smart. The fact that you can then share that and get feedback and almost return immediately to your designs, again, is really useful. I think the kind of the next hurdle, which I'm sure you guys are already fully working on, is how do we sort of enable the handoff? How do we make sure that that's really seamless? There are, like I said, stuff that's out there already that does that for us, but it'd be really good to sort of see you put the same energy that you have into what you've got so far into that next step.
Yeah. So looking at XD, I see you brought something for us. I mean, what is like You guys are using it at customer projects. So,
yeah,
what
so
would be the one
trying it
thing
out,
you
yeah.
would like to point out?
There's a few good things when it comes to designing in XD. I think kind of the stuff of, I think one of the talks I've seen you do before, Jay, is around lists. There's always seems to be kind of continual lists and that kind of repeating pattern of elements. So in this example here, which is a weather app we've been working on with the Met Office, you have these cards. These are snapshots that sort of give you like a snapshot of what the weather is for that day. You can change it from from hourly view to a 5-day view. And these are repeating, and part of the app allows you to go in and add as many of these as you want. So to create this card here, and then have to kind of recreate it or copy and paste it is really kind of tedious. So what's great here is I've set this up so that I can actually now build out as many of these as I want to get a real view as to what's actually going to be required when I have that extended view. And what's really great as well is if I jump across here, and I look for, let me just grab this stuff here, assets. Oh, we're offline. Great. Okay.
As it always is with live stuff.
Always with the same with live stuff.
But I like how he's plugging in the logo of his company.
Hey,
Yeah,
I got to get the plug in there.
That's
So
very nice.
assets here. So sorry, let me get back to this. So locations, I've got a text file which I can use here, and I can actually use this to sort of change the text that's in here. So I've already done this, so you probably won't notice a change, but had I changed that, that would repeat across the grid, and it's really useful to sort of use live data, because often testing with just static comps isn't good enough, so that the more data and sort of realistic, again, it's about context, testing in context, and getting that data
And it works
into the device.
as well, doesn't it?
Exactly, yeah. So actually these little images I've got here, if this is actually going to work, let's see. If I take this and drag it onto one of these, let's have a look. You can see there that actually I'm able to sort of simulate what the different weather would look like on this one as well.
That's really interesting, because actually what we see right now is this new breed of all these tools, right? And it seems like the one thing that's still missing, that's like really this gap, is that we try to create experiences that are going to work long term. This is why with style guides and pattern libraries and design systems and all those things kind of come into place. But it's always difficult because you have one, master file in Adobe XD or in Sketch or in Photoshop or anywhere else, but it doesn't matter what you're using, in design, the screen design, and then you have the prototype, right? So I think that this is like the gap, when as you update your master file in the design, if we could immediately have update at the same time in the pattern library or design system, whatever it is you have, that would make so many things so much less complicated. I think this is the one main gap that's kind of still existing.
And we get the same feedback, and that's what we're working on currently. I think a first step on filling that gap will be with XD very soon. So.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah. This sounds really interesting. We also have some questions coming in from the audience. One of them is for Chris. And the question is, what are the most important skills that you're expecting from UX designers today?
Well, skills is probably the wrong word. It's attitude and aptitude, really. So yes, we can have like a bulleted list of whether they can do wireframes, whether they can do this, that, and the other. That's not useful. What I want is somebody who comes with like an empathetic package, he says, struggling to say it, and understands the real world, and probably has got experience working in other industries before they come to me as a UX designer, because asking questions in interviews, being able to do all sorts of desk research, that's not necessarily about design. That's about the bit that comes before the design, the bit that we call discovery. So I've got in my team somebody who used to work for BBC Radio 1 as a reporter doing Vox Pops. He brings those skills to Syzygy. I've also got somebody who's very much a performer in the evening. So he's out on stage doing experimental music tracks, and some of that has been recorded out in the open. And he changes his tracks according to the responses of his audience.
Oh yes,
So these sorts of things you can bring in to user experience and the design. And so I don't hire two people the same with the same skill sets. That's just not right.
That's really, really interesting, because I also know some companies who are actually specifically looking for comedians
Yes.
Because why? Well, because if you hire a comedian, they know exactly how to write good copy. They know exactly how to communicate a message, how to kind of make it witty and how to produce clarity. So this is like this really nice mixed bag of different qualities that are kind of really, really critical at this point. We have more questions coming in. I just don't know where to start. What errors or problems in UX design across all channels do you see the most? Are they easily fixed? Maybe it's a question for you.
Across design channels, across all the channels. What are
the common problems you see, like UX issues that keep appearing every time?
Okay, stuff that keeps appearing every time. I think there's a tendency to reduce.
Over-reduce?
Over-reduce. I think we see it a lot with onboarding or when you're trying to get users to try and understand the process. I think the common conception is, hey, we'll just get rid of as much as possible, and what you'd end up doing is actually not making it obvious. And we've done projects whereby where we started with maybe 3 screens for an onboarding process, and through testing and validation, we actually built it out to 12 screens, which seems counterintuitive, but every single result that we got back returned a positive result. It was actually much more straightforward for them to understand. And especially when you've got constrained screen size, you don't want to cram that full of information. You want to kind of easily guide people through their journey. And if you can do it right, they actually don't realize they've gone through 12 screens. They've just gone through a process, and it's much more efficient.
Okay. Jay, are you over-reducing the interface in Adobe XD?
Over-reducing.
Oversimplifying.
You know, I think like striving for invisible UI is something I mean, it's something we like to achieve, you know. But maybe at the same time, it's close to being impossible for that kind of tool. I wouldn't say over-reducing. I mean, what's your guys' take on that? You're working with it every day. Is it over-reduced or?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, something such as the layers that you've been talking about recently, that's very much what we would class as contextual. So it's only there when you need it, or it's only showing the layers that you need it. We use those sorts of things that within our sort of user flows, like the designs that we do. So make sure you're not showing somebody something that they don't need. Yeah. So that sort of thinking brought into the software design for Adobe XD is good to hear.
Yeah.
Right. I'm also very curious about one specific thing that keeps kind of appearing all the time. Well, at least in projects that I'm involved in, estimates. How do you get to proper estimates? How do you know how much time you're going to get? Do you have like a bullet, like a magic formula that works everywhere? Or do you have something like that gives you a good approximation of what this is going to cost and then how much time it's going to take? How do you approach it? Do you know, or is it just a magic number?
It isn't a magic number. It's another thing, and I've spoken earlier on about managing the client. So the client comes to you, so we want this thing built. How much is it going to cost? How long is it going to take? You can base it on similar projects you've done before. But in this world where we're all supposed to be working agile, you shouldn't have an end cost because the thing just keeps on going and you design it along the way. So that becomes very difficult. So what we sometimes do is say, okay, the design process is going to be what we think is a series of sprints, and by sprint number 5, depending on how long the sprints are, perhaps we will have your project in its first releasable iteration. And a sprint will cost you this with this team. So we very much do our pricing on sort of team costs, but we always reserve the right to say we will be able to give you a more accurate cost after the discovery phase. Right. Because if you don't do a really good discovery phase, or until you've done a really good discovery phase, you don't really know what you're going to be building. So after discovery, we'll give you a really good cost, but that cost will be based on an estimated number of sprints at this price per sprint.
All right. What about you, Iain?
Yeah, estimates are a tough thing to get right. I think especially around user experience, I think it's often measured in days, or if you just put a certain amount of time on it, that's it. You know, I'll have 5 pints of UX with this, and then I'll just get on with it. It's like, no. Specifically, something like user experience should be continual. It should be something that's put throughout the project, not just kind of done up front and then left to sort of languish as you go through the project. And I think what you talk about in terms of sprints is, we'll work in sprints as well. And we'll also take moments to sort of stop and reflect on what was done and make sure that, okay, this is what we were able to achieve with this team. What do we need to adapt either in the team or in the ways of working to make sure that we can keep going forward at pace and try and hit what we often have is a fixed budget.
All right. So Jay, how do you estimate how much time you need for a specific feature?
That's a good question. And I'm lucky that I'm not doing that on the team.
Okay, so this is your perfect answer to it. All right, so let's just finish with the last one, maybe, because I'm really curious for this one. So, I mean, you've been doing a lot of stuff in your lives, right? And I'm curious, is there any specific thing that you want to have solved for yourself as a problem that keeps kind of reappearing in your career, that you finally want to get done, kind of set a check mark on your to-do list or so in your life, to say, I got this. I know how to do it now. It took me a while to figure it out, but I got this now. Is there something like this that you want to have on your bucket list soon? You just go, whatever.
Well, it's not something as much as a process I want cracked, but I would love to be part of the team that creates the Chrome extension that allows you to surf clickbait without going through 34 screens to work out what Susan Boyle looks like today. Okay. If we can do that, all right, plug it in.
That sounds plausible.
And get to that last screen.
You'll get a call from me.
Advertisers will hate me.
Yeah, you'll get a call from me. All right.
I just want that magic button in XD that says design this app, and I can press it.
Call it a day.
And it just goes and does it, right? That's
I believe it doesn't work this way.
Can I give you an Adobe XD feature I'd love? Annotations. If we can crack annotations, that would be marvelous. And I've seen that it's something that's in the pipeline.
Jay, by the end of next week, next sprint?
Yes, something like that, yeah. It might have. Did you update to the latest beta?
2 days ago. I've been too busy.
Okay, so just do it and see if it's in.
Jay, what about you then?
Surprise.
The thing.
Let me take that question to a little bit more.
You really don't like my question?
If I'm allowed to add a personal note, what I'm and my fellow local leaders of IXA Berlin are currently thinking of is how you as designers can do to help fight populism. That's my immediate bucket list.
Yeah.
That's a very optimistic note to finish on.
And a sad one at the same time. Sorry for that.
No, that's fine. We'll continue keep going for a while, but unfortunately we have to wrap up. So thank you so much for joining me now. Thank you, Joy, for co-moderating as well. Help me out. It's a big table. Yeah, it's very difficult to hear what's happening on the other side of the table. So thank you guys. We'll talk a bit later. All right.